Welcome to another edition of Doctor2Doctor in the chat room, where we discuss relevant topics that impact our communities and our world. We want to thank you for sticking around with us and coming back each and every Saturday to share this hour with us, because when you show up, it gives us an opportunity to continue to show up. And as always, I hope you guys are staying well mentally, physically, and spiritually. Do make sure that you are taking care of yourselves. Um, so our topic today is certainly a relevant topic, and it is one that I hope will be helpful to you, especially to our young people that are listening in. Um, Research shows that frequency of trauma exposure is associated with the involvement of the criminal justice system. Prior research has also indicated that an association between exposure to trauma, for example, being victimized, um, and and other types of trauma, and perpetration of crime, especially in the context of chronic victimization. Trauma experienced during childhood may result in profound and long-lasting negative effects that extend well into adulthood. The effects may be psychological, they may be behavioral, they may be social, they may even be biological. And these effects are associated with long-term consequences, including risk for further victimization, delinquency and adult criminality, substance abuse, poor school performance, depression, chronic disease, and the list just goes on and on. Today, I'm honored to have in the chat room our very special guest, Mr. Curtis L. Sangster. I'm sorry, Sangster was born in Brownsville, Tennessee, and he graduated from Haywood High School, whereafter he joined the military as a non-commissioned officer in the United States Marine Corps. Curtis served in the first Persian Gulf War from 1990 to 1991, and received several decorations and awards before he began to go down the wrong path. And he's going to talk more about that today. He is now a born-again Christian, and he is transitioning back into society with a better sense of judgment, where his mission is to reach out to today's at-risk youth so that they can make better choices. He is newly married to his beautiful wife, Mrs. Stacy Hammond Sangster, and he is the author of From Prosperity to Adversity, Part 1, where he takes us on this realistic journey of his life, his mistakes, his pitfalls, and most importantly, his comebacks. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sangster. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Um, I just want to start with what made you put pen to paper and have such courage to be so transparent about your journey? What made you even go and say, hey, let me put this all down on paper?
While I was in the military prison, I read over 100 books.
Mm.
And I read a book called Make You Want to Holler by Nathan McCall.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a man that had a journey similar to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And after he went through his pitfalls, he put it all on paper, served his time, and ended up being a newsroom um, journeyman for the Washington Press.
Mm-hmm.
He reaches out to the youth. And while I was sitting in there reading that book, I read it 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me decide to want to reach out to the youth and be a vocal leader to our disenfranchised youth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on my heart because I've been through a lot, even as a youth,
Mm-hmm.
and I can identify with the today's troubled youth. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided to help and put it on paper.
And I think that is so awesome, and it's nothing like using your real life experience to help somebody else along the way, especially particularly our young folks. And when you talk about you as a youth, one of the things that in your book that you talked about. You and your siblings were abandoned on a bridge as children, right? And
Right.
so talk about that and the role that you played in rescuing your siblings.
Um, Before I start on this, I'd like to thank God
Mhm,
for even being here
mhm,
to reach out to the youth. You
mhm,
know, as I was a youth at the very young age, and so was my sisters and brothers that was in the car that night.
mhm,
I was on the way to Ripley, Tennessee, from Brownsville, Tennessee, with my mother to sell some insurance, and we was in a car. The car broke down, and a stranger, a man, got pulled up to the car, and him and my mother talked about 5 minutes, and she jumped in the car with the stranger, and left us alone.
mhm,
Uh, it was very cold that night. I can remember it's around fall of October of 1978. And we never heard nothing from her. She left, told me to lock the car up. Um, the kids, the younger siblings, were crying. It was cold, and I didn't know what to do. And it was something that got into me and told me to get out that car and flag this truck driver down
mhm.
in the middle of the street. And it was a blessing that this man um, rescued us,
Mhm,
took us back to Brownsville, took us to the police department, and we were saved.
mhm,
And I can remember just like yesterday that, I was scared.
mhm,
Back then, a lot of abandoned kids were um, missing by
mhm,
strangers.
mhm.
And I just thank God. It was nothing but God that saved us. And for me to be sitting here to tell you about this story that my mother left us alone for several hours in a car and ran off with a stranger was really a traumatic,
Yeah.
experience.
Mhm,
And don't get me wrong, I love my mother. She brought us in this world,
mhm,
but I can never understand why she took us through this.
mhm.
And like many other youngsters today, I can identify with them by going through such an experience.
Mhm.
And I just thank God that He rescued us that night.
Yeah.
You know, my mother beat it on us. She taught us how to steal. Um, we didn't go to school. I
Mhm,
failed back a grade, and it was embarrassing, and I hated my mother. You
mhm.
know, but at the end of the day, and through it all, God was by my side, and I thank Him daily for that.
So how long after this, like what was life like after this for you and your siblings, and how long before you actually saw your mom again, or did you?
Well, I saw her after in court.
Mhm,
Um, it she was trying to get us back in her custody, but at that point, we knew that we was about to be with our father, and
mhm,
my raising up with my dad was we had a very good coming up as raising as kids, going to church.
mhm,
We went to school. We was disciplined.
mhm,
Um, I played sports. Um, we was taught to respect our elders.
mhm,
We went to church,
mhm,
and it was just like normally, we was looked out for. My dad remarried to Peggy Sangster,
mhm.
and she loved us like we were her own.
Wow.
And but something was missing: the
Mhm,
love of my mother.
mhm,
The kids was at school, and where the place we lived at in Brownwood, Tennessee, we lived on Fairground, and a lot of people knew what happened to us,
mhm.
and just the embarrassment, you
Yeah.
know. what really, really bothered me, the isolation that
Mm-hmm.
any kid that can go through a situation like that, it's still in the back of her mind. Even when I was with my father, he taught us the right thing to do. And he also encouraged that we be successful as we was coming up. We work hard for everything that we got,
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest with people.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, man, it was a crushing blow that what I went through with my mother.
Mm-hmm. Did
And
you find out late in later years that your mom may have experienced her own trauma?
no, I never thought about that. I
Mm-hmm.
never found out, but what I found out that that she was it was she had a mental um breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Her and my father went through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
She was basically in and out of relationship with different men she brought over to the house. She also was in affairs with my father.
Mm-hmm.
They was in several arguments and fights. My father ended up leaving, but what I found out is that she was mentally disturbed.
Okay.
She had some problems. So once I found out, I, tried to reach out, but it was something in me that couldn't forgive her
Mm-hmm.
until she died.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it was
after her death, you were able to forgive her. Why?
I was able to forgive her due to reading the Bible.
Mm.
Um, Once I got into the Bible, I had to learn to forgive her. When I went through so much pain, even while I was incarcerated,
Mm-hmm.
I had to forgive her. And when she died, it took me years to overcome it because I never forgave her.
Mm.
You know, and like I said, as being a young youth and a young man without his mother, his biological mother was
Mm-hmm.
really
Yeah.
um, a problem that I had to be successful. I was missing love of my mother,
Yeah.
you know, and while the other kids was, enjoying theirs, I didn't have that, and no matter my stepmother played a great significant part in my life. She's still with me today,
Mm.
but I always wonder why my mother couldn't give me the same love, my
Yeah.
biological mother.
Yeah.
And it turned me to violence.
Mm-hmm.
It turned me into loneliness. It also planted a seed for me to start stealing again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, anything that happened as in the past while you was young, it would catch up with you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
So,
know,
so with that said, when did the trouble really start? Like, when did things start to kind of go left for you?
um, when I was in the
Because
military,
you end up with your dad and things are better. You do have a void, but things are better. Life is better. But then
right,
things kind of go left for you. And why and when?
uh, it was like um, I had reached the peak in my military career. Um, I reached the rank of sergeant. I received several decorations and awards. I traveled all over the country. Um, but it was something that um, it was like I couldn't handle success.
Mm-hmm.
I got,
Mm.
you
Interesting.
know, it was just like I couldn't handle success, and it was there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had people behind me that was supporting my effort in the military, family, friends. I was on a high, and when I say I was on a high, I was feeling myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what I forgot about God. I didn't
Mm.
have him in the mix. I went to churches. I knew the Bible due to my upbringing through my father and stepmother. But I forgot about God.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was alone, um, I started drinking. I started womanizing.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing drugs after I reached the peak of my career in the Marine Corps. But like I said, that isolation, that loneliness
Mm-hmm.
came back to haunt me. You know, the stealing, the drug abuse, the womanizing, the cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there when it went bad, you know, I met this woman and the and I was not honest with
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
her. I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was a player and was getting played.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended up costing me my military career. And then guess what? You know, the old habits came back. The seed that was planted by my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, not to blame anything on my mother, but it definitely played a part in this bad experience that I experienced in the military. Um, and it cost me dearly. My mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say this to any youth that is going through what I went through. You know, um, it's nothing like being all alone, but you got to seek some help. Reach out, talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, seek help at when it's time to really talk to somebody. Be honest with what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let it go just go by. Don't forget about it. Remember where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, really, I should have really talked to somebody.
Yeah.
I was hiding, you know. Um, my
But do you
father
think
did.
though, do you think, you talk about the embarrassment of what you went through as a child. So even as an adult, when you were going through things, maybe that was an embarrassment too, and it made it difficult to open up about it.
Yes, this really was a serious embarrassment. I embarrassed myself,
Mm-hmm.
my family,
Mm-hmm.
the Marine Corps,
Mm-hmm.
which you know they really supported me,
Mm-hmm.
and they liked me. I liked them.
Mm-hmm.
I trained troops.
Mm-hmm.
I went all over the place,
Yeah.
and my career was astonishing.
Yeah.
I was picked to be one of the highest Marine security guard to approach to being one of the best Marines in the United States Marine Corps by going
And
to MSG.
I want to talk more about that. We're at a break. I want to talk more about that when we come back from break. We'll be right back. We're talking to Mr. Curtis Sangster about his career and some of the pitfalls. And again, as I said earlier, most importantly, the comebacks. We'll be right back in a moment on 94.7 FM. And we're back on 94.7 FM. I'm Doctor2Doctor in the chat room. We're talking to Mr. Curtis Sangster. He's talking about his journey, all of the challenges that he's faced, and now to get to where he is today. You talk about how you ranked in the military, and you said in your book you even served in like a prison ward, I believe. Um,
Yes.
okay. Speak to that. I just find so much irony in that,
Yes.
to have done that and then you end up actually in prison.
Um, like I said, I was a good Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had several awards, decoration. I was disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
I was motivated, and I was a hard charger, a devil dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Marine Corps. And I also motivated other Marines
Mm-hmm.
and Marines that was um, older than me in the Marine Corps. And I just had that about me. And I had the love, I had the discipline to be one of the best that you could ever be in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that I couldn't reach. I couldn't reach that high level of success
Mm-hmm.
due to my upbringing when I was a youth. I couldn't forget about it. It was just
Mhm.
like um, I was feeling myself too much,
Mm.
and and I lost track of things. I lost focus,
Mhm.
and I went to several schools,
Mhm.
and you know I appreciated Marine Corps, and it disciplined me as a man. And I really think that every man, young youth, should at least experience 3 years of the military.
Wow. And
I
tell me
really,
why. Is that for discipline?
for discipline, for experience, for education, especially the youth, today's youth.
Mhm.
There's you know we got senseless shootings and we got gang activities, and I want to deliberate on that a little bit,
Mhm.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, while I was in the military prison, um, it really done something to me because the discipline that was in there. And so while I was in there, I didn't reflect back on what I did. It
Mhm.
was like the time went by so fast that I didn't really sit down to reflect on what I did.
Mhm.
I didn't really um, forgive my victims
Mhm. Oh. Mhm.
because I was blaming my mother
Mm.
for my
Yeah.
mistakes.
Mhm.
But it was me
Mhm.
at the end of the day because I had the success. But I didn't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to say to the youth, if you're going through any trials and tribulations, you you got to reach down and really look at yourself in the mirror and see you. It's nothing like when a man look in the mirror and see what he become after he made several mistakes and treated victims the way I did by
Mm.
manipulation, lying.
Wow.
And what I'm saying today to today's youth, it's nothing like when a man get his freedom taken.
Mhm.
See, anybody can go to prison and be who they want to be,
Mhm.
and comes out and leave what you went through in prison. But it takes a man to come out and share what he went through: isolation, loneliness.
Mhm.
Um, you see things that you normally wouldn't see, that I experienced in prison. You know, extortion. I seen several men, young youth get extorted, gang members joining gang members to fit in where they get in. But at the end of the day, um, they they reap what they sowed. Um, they couldn't handle that loneliness.
Mhm.
They was on the street with a gun. They made a mistake, but they really regret what they did.
Yeah.
And I done met several gangsters in there, hardcore men. And you know what he told me, young man, this is not your home. You don't want to be locked up and for the rest of your life like I've been. And I understood where he was coming from when I went through my several experience and stints in a military prison, and also when I did time in a penitentiary.
Mhm.
It wasn't a pleasant state.
Yeah.
So what I'm telling the youth today, you know, prison is not your destination.
Mhm.
College, school,
Mhm.
marriage,
Mhm.
being a doctor, lawyer, what your plans are. Be successful in those areas. And what I like to see in today's society is that the community help raise some of our youth. It's gonna take more than parents to raise them
Yeah.
because you
I
got
agree.
single mothers out there.
Mhm.
But the community, these pastors, these organizations, they have to come together and be um, a parent also, teachers, Because if we don't come together as one to raise our youth, we're going to have some problems.
You're exactly right. And I talk about this a lot on the show, and I'm glad you brought up our churches, because when I read about the civil rights movement, for example, and how involved the churches were in that movement, I'm like, our churches have got to get more involved with our youth. I'm not talking about just having a youth department at
That's
the
right.
church, right? It's deeper than that.
It's
And
deeper than
we've
that.
got a role we've got to play. And I so appreciate you saying that. And I've got so many questions, and you're kind of touching on some of them already.
Yes,
You,
ma'am.
you talked about the addiction and the substance abuse.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Um, do you remember how that started? Like, did it start when you were really, really young? Was something offered to you, or was this something voluntarily that you sought out on your own?
Well, I started out abusing drugs overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was feeling myself.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got to rank sergeant, I met a woman. I was partying. I never touched the stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I was such a discipline, and I vowed to temper my body or put anything in there.
Mm-hmm.
Even drinking. I started drinking. I started drugging after that. Last overseas that extension that I went on, and when I went overseas before, I was a lance corporal or corporal, but this time I was a sergeant. I could stay out. I could party.
Mm-hmm.
So I met a beautiful woman over there,
Mm-hmm.
several of them, and I started abusing drugs, and one thing led to another. I got addicted.
Mm-hmm.
I hid the addiction so well, snorting cocaine, and I wouldn't wish nobody to go on a journey like that.
Mm-hmm.
A substance, um, it's not for a body, for a human to take that
Mm-hmm.
and go through what caused me so much pain.
Yeah.
It took away my military career that I wanted to stay in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It also hurt my family because they did the prison time with me. They
Mm-hmm.
went through what I went through.
Yeah. I've had a couple of guys on the show. One that did about, I do believe he said 9 years, but he had been wrongfully convicted and it was overturned, but he'd done 9 years, by then. Another young man, who is actually, God rest his soul, since he was on this show, he died by murder suicide, unfortunately. But they both said the same things. They both said my family and my loved ones did that time too.
They did too, and it is you calling home, you asking for money, you getting yourself in all type of gambling debts.
Mm-hmm.
You trying to make moves um, that's making you a more criminal
Mm-hmm.
in there. So for myself, I raised a lot of guys,
Mm-hmm.
young guys. I
Mm-hmm.
reached out to them. They got their GEDs. Um, I told them about life. They was very interested in my story.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't believe that I was in the military. They wondered why I was in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just telling them, it's just like if you are not serious about life,
Mm-hmm.
this what can happen to you.
Yeah.
If you don't have the proper nurturing as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
or you hanging out with friends that don't really care about you,
Mm-hmm.
this is what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And today's society, we got a lot of young kids smoking cigarettes, uh, smoking marijuana. See,
Mm-hmm.
marijuana is a drug. Alcoholic is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So if your kids is at the age of 9, 10, 11, 12 years old
Mm-hmm.
doing this what can lead to
It's
self-destruction.
absolutely.
And it can cause them a whole life of pain.
Mm-hmm.
So if we as teachers, if we as pastors, if we as parents, or we as leaders,
Just the village that we always talk about. Yeah.
we talk about, if we could go back to those old teachers,
Mm-hmm.
a community that can raise the kid,
Mhm.
we can be successful.
How did you get out of addiction? Like, what was the turning point there?
The turning point for me for not wanting that appetite anymore, I had to go to a hardcore drug program in Durham, North Carolina called
Mhm.
TROSA, where they took me in and put them in a circle, and they really, really lit into them and let them solve the abuse that they're doing to themselves, to their parents, and to their life, and to their communities.
Mhm.
And that was a very good program. That was a turning point for me.
Mhm.
And I've been clean um, for about 11 years.
Wow.
After that, I
Congratulations.
committed.
Mhm.
After I went to that program, and
Mhm.
I dropped off and thought that um, I was a better drug addict than another drug addict.
Mhm.
See, you can be what you want to be in front of people's eyes, but when you fake it into making it, it's not going to work out as well. You
Wow.
got to be serious about their recovery. You
Mhm.
got to take steps. You got to admit
Mhm.
that you're an addict.
Mhm.
And I'm a grateful recovering addict because I've been clean for several years now.
Mhm.
And I'm hungry to reach out to the youth to be successful and show them that God is in the mix. When He's in the mix of your life after the struggle, it's a beautiful thing. And I want to really deliberate on this for the youth. Don't let anyone define your path. You don't have to be a product of it.
Mhm.
It's always time for change as time permits for change.
Mhm.
And we got to work together and come to a common goal to reach out to the youth, because this is really costing us our future,
Yeah,
because they the future,
absolutely. Whether we like it or not, they are our
whether
future.
whether we like it or not.
So I'm so happy again that, one of your goals and your mission is to help our at-risk youth. Because as I said earlier on, it's so near and dear to my heart. I've worked with at-risk youth for many, many years.
Yes,
Have you been able to get your book, and we're going to talk about your book later. Have you been able to get your book into places where it can make a difference, particularly, at-risk programs, etc.?
we're about to start that right now. Um,
Awesome.
we're about to start it right now. I've been up to the Boys and Girl Club down here in Brownsville, Tennessee,
Mm-hmm,
and I have spoken to them.
mm-hmm.
But um, not only that, we need to really just speak in today's society, we got to meet them where they at.
No doubt.
We got to go out there to the streets, and we got to elevate and raise our duty as
Mm-hmm,
a leader, as
mm-hmm,
a parent, as a teacher, as a father,
mm-hmm,
or a preacher.
mm-hmm.
We really got to come to a common ground with this, and we got to elevate our teachings, our togetherness, to bring about change in the life. We got presidents,
Mm-hmm.
we got congressmen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's about them.
Mm-hmm.
We forgot about our youth.
Yeah.
We cannot leave our youth behind because we're all caught up in our own agenda.
Yeah. And I
So
tell you, I'm here in I live in Memphis, Tennessee,
okay,
and the crime rate is just on the rise, and the majority of the crimes are committed by juveniles.
that's right.
And I don't know, I don't know what the rationale and the reasoning behind that is, and like why all of a sudden things are getting worse. It seems like we have access to more resources, access to better things, but it's getting worse.
It's getting worse because we forgetting about them.
Mm,
We're forgetting about our young kids
mm-hmm,
because we're so caught up in our agenda,
mm-hmm,
our success.
Yeah.
and we're leaving them behind. And when we do that, then we're opening up, endangering our own lives, because
Mhm.
we forgot about the kids that is struggling with loneliness,
Mhm.
a tragedy that, as I experienced,
Mhm. Mhm.
we can't forget about that.
When you
And so,
talk to these youth, when you have the opportunity to talk to these youth and speak to them, um, are you wide openly transparent, and what do you see after you've talked with them? Do you get any feedback from them that says, you know, this was helpful? I
yes,
want to change my life. Yeah.
for a few of them,
Mm-hmm.
I can see it on their faces,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like they can't believe what I went through and
Mm-hmm.
that I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say this here, like I said before, once it's going to take more than speaking to these kids,
Mm-hmm.
because today's kids are smarter and they very manipulative. But what we got to do is we got to they got to see it in us who's being
Mm-hmm.
real.
Mm-hmm.
We got to show them, and just instead of speaking it, and we got to be we can't be we can't be polite,
Mm-hmm.
especially the guys that's been in the penitentiary. We got to get them the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be nonchalant with it. We got to really take it to them. We got to bring it to them, because they're going to bring it to you. They're going to have questions. So you got to get them the uncut version of what you went through,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to let them see what they could end up really being if they don't get their lives together.
Wow.
You got to meet them where they at. If
Mm-hmm.
we don't, we're going to continue to have silly shooting, gang activity, because nobody don't want to reach out to them.
Yeah.
And, it's my calling.
Mm-hmm.
It's my calling. It's
Mm-hmm.
my duty. Just like it's well to anyone that's been to the penitentiary that have experienced this. This is what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I want to talk about when you came to understand the importance of your faith. Um, we're going to talk about that when we come back from break. We're at another break. We'll be right back on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM in just a moment.
okay.
And we are still here on 94.7 FM, Doctor to Doctor in the chat room, talking to Mr. Curtis Sangster. Um, Before the break, I was mentioning your faith. You have a strong faith. When
Yes.
when and how did you come to understand the importance of your faith?
When I faced this last time,
Mm-hmm.
um, I have been to prison on several occasions. And when I got this last sentence for first degree burglary robbery at a college, I was all on the news. I had given up. I thought it was over.
Mm-hmm.
The first plea they offered me was 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I turned it down. They came with 14 years. I turned it down. After serving several stints in the prison um, facilities for doing the same crime
Mm-hmm.
habitually,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to take it to trial
Mm-hmm.
and represent myself, knowing I was guilty,
Mm-hmm.
still not identifying uh, my faults, my mistakes. That
Mm-hmm.
was on me.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to play the system um, and blame it on everybody but myself. So as I was going through the county jail, the state, it was like they was holding me on a $1 million bond, as like I had them killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like I did because I had manipulated at the age of 44, going into these college campuses, stealing from innocent victims as kids,
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
And it it really brought to reality who I were.
Mhm.
I became a liar, a thief, womanizer, and all between. Um, this really changed me when I went to trial, facing 50 years, all alone, had a mistrial, and ended up giving 7 years. This touched my faith.
Mhm.
This let me know that God represented me in that courtroom.
Mhm.
He saved my life, and I give him all the glory because it was nothing but grace.
Yeah.
And I can tell anybody that if you just believe, if you just believe, you can get that same grace.
Mhm.
Because it's not about me. I went through this. This is not about me. It's about helping others with my story to show you how God will work if you determine to read his word, to surrender to him. Because man can't do what God do for me.
Yeah.
And I'm a product of that.
Mhm.
And I continue to serve him um, daily. After it was said and done, I went through all this time serving in and out of prison. I am happily married.
Mhm.
I have a good paying job.
Mhm.
I am an author, and I have my own shoe
Yeah.
called Visions.
Mhm.
And due to the work that I did for God while I was in prison,
Mhm.
I went out speaking to the youth from prison. I was on work release. I made money um, to start a new life. I had pastors supporting me in North Carolina,
Mhm.
where I'll be going next month to speaking to the youth and some of the old guys that was there.
Mhm.
And God is real. He's been with me the whole time, and I just didn't see it until the spiritual awakening happened to me,
Mhm.
and it touched my faith. And I give him all the glory and I thank him. You
Yeah.
know, he's real.
Yes, he is. There must have been a psychological impact from the moment the judge handed down your sentences, um, to your first, stepping into the prison cell. What was that like? And do you talk about that when you're telling these young folks, prison is not where you want to be?
When I didn't know what it's just like when you're in the county jail, you don't know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
You laid up. You can't reach out to anyone that um you want to reach out to because you're in a prison cell
Hmm.
and it's get lonely in there,
Yeah.
especially on the holidays. You miss your loved ones.
Hmm.
Um, you facing all this time. I'm facing 50 years, and when my process started out for me to go to prison, it you know it was a scary experience
Hmm.
because you heard so much about prison, but you never experienced
Yeah.
until you fall in there. You amongst murderers, child molesters, thieves, other thieves, robbers, and
Hmm.
all between. But you got to go in there and get in where you fit in.
Hmm.
Who are you gonna be?
Hmm.
But on this last stint, I had to make a change. I had to look in the mirror and strip all the way down
Hmm.
and change for the better because I saw I was headed for self-destruction because mistakes, gang activities, violences lead to prison, jails, and institutions. And
Hmm.
I want to reach out to the youth and say, Don't let this be your
Past.
experience.
Yeah.
Don't let my mistakes be your experience, because you're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You got gangsters that done did several murders, wish and regret that they're not in there because they're making money off you. They treat you how they can treat you in the way they want to. So I don't want to ever go to a place like that. I wouldn't wish prison on my worst enemies, because it's nothing like when a man get his freedom taken and he all alone and don't know what's going to happen. And my biggest fear was dying in prison. And I seen so many kids die in prison due to hanging themselves, taking batteries, police brutality, stabbings, you know. And then I thank God that I wasn't a victim of police brutality while going through these mistakes. I thank him for that. And that's a spiritual awakening within itself. To you doing all this dirt, and you're not a victim of police brutality, and you got these victims of being a victim of police brutality. So I had to wake up. When enough is going to be enough. So when I looked in the mirror and saw who I was becoming, it's nothing like that feeling. You know, with God in the mix. With God in the mix. You can't do it alone. Because that's who it's going to be, you and God.
Yeah.
If you believe. If you're not, you're headed for destruction, for prison for the rest of your life. You're going to feel this the rest of your life. Going to prison, isolated. Don't know when. Sometimes you don't know when your next meal gonna be, because the food is garbage. The food is garbage. And you want to continue to be in a place like that. I don't know what type of person want to experience that for the rest of their life.
Yeah. So has this book been therapy for you, or is it like a resurfacing of bad emotions? What has it been for you?
It was therapy for me, because I see what I put on paper. I witnessed what happened to me. And it shows that it was God. And it was, every time I sit back and think about, when I read a chapter or two, I think about, and I go there, that it hadn't been for God's grace, I wouldn't be here today doing this interview.
Yeah.
So it was a mission for me from day one. This was my mission. This was my calling.
Yeah.
To
and
reach
that
out
was the journey you had to take to get to it. Yeah.
I had the journey to take, because God had to take me to some things, you know, for me to be the man that I am today, because I haven't always been this man.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful for the change.
Speaking of that, what about the naysayers? What about the people that say, "Oh, he ain't nobody like," because people won't. They tend to not let us forget.
Yeah.
Who we
Yes.
used to be.
But right. But you cannot let a person define who you are.
Absolutely.
You cannot let a person define who you are today, and especially after the change. You gonna have naysayers and haters. I call them haters, because they don't understand what you went through. Because some of the people that are naysayers and haters couldn't survive what I went through. Only the strong survive, and the wiser get wiser for a purpose. And my person is to save people like me that I went through, the youth. That's my destiny. And if I only save one youth, I have did my job. But if it all comes along with it, and we can find a solution that is working, to reach out, that would be all as well. It'd be a blessing as well by God. Because we, at a certain point, we got to reach out to the youth and make a change for the better. And it's going to get worse before it get better. But we got to we got to believe, we got to have faith.
You said that this is part one, the book, so that means there's a part two. Where's part two taking us?
Part two is taking where a guy get out of his military prison, knowing he wasn't going to do the right thing because he played the victim role. He didn't get help. He wasn't trying to be successful upon getting out of prison. He was reaching out to run to women and to do drugs, to get high again, because he didn't seek self-help. And he knew God. He went to church and got the feeling, but was it real? Was he keeping it real with himself? See, you got to be real with yourself to reach out to others, to make change.
Yeah.
And this book carries me on several stints in prison. He went from stealing from his military personnel to stealing from college kids, college campuses, where he got back on his feet again and had his own moving business and started working for moving companies. And he manipulated, lied, womanizing all over again, just to return to prison, to go through suffering, long suffering, taking his family through the same experiences, bad experiences over and over again, until he got it right through God, till he sit down and identify his mistakes. And it's going to take you on a trail of honest, dishonest. It's really gonna reach out to some people that I think that is going through the same thing I went through. And it's titled From Recidivism to Redemption, where I got my faith.
Okay.
Right, where I got my faith from God. And that was a change within itself from grace, correction, from grace from God. And I really thank him. It's really going to be a good book. I pour out my heart. I talk about the youth because I raised a lot of youth in the penitentiary, and it felt like it was my destiny to write a second book, to write part two, where I'm in and out of prison. This last stint, the detectives came out on my job. I had also a good job there. Arrested me, and it's been on since to recovery. I'm no longer a drug addict. I'm a recovering addict. Through the grace of God. And this book will show you how God's works.
I heard you on another interview talk about how you survived your sentence by setting goals, etc. And and how you were writing even when you were incarcerated. And it actually made me think, I started thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how he wrote from jail. I even thought about Paul and how, Paul in the Bible and how he was writing to the churches from prison, right?
Right.
And was that all a part of your navigating through those challenges?
Right, through my struggles. Writing, I was setting goals, I was setting steps, and I was achieving them. I even was writing prisoners. I mean, youth, disenfranchised youth from prison, and was getting feedback. I was going, and I had the pleasure of going from prison out to churches and speaking to youth and speaking to youth at schools, writing plays and demonstrating plays of acts of my experience, and so they could really see what it's like in prison, what it's like to be a drug addict, and I wanted them to see like how they was hurting their parents, and it took what really impacted me, my feelings when I lost my father, my sister, my mother, while I was going through these prison centers. And I never got to say my goodbye.
Wow.
And what I'm trying to say is that I wouldn't wish this experience on no man or no youth offender, you know, to lose your close siblings while you're on your path to come back from your adversity. You know, I wouldn't wish that on nobody. And you know, to sit up and just to leave a kid isolated up in bad experiences and teaching them the wrong thing, I feel for them.
We're almost at the end of the show. I got one quick question for you, and then I want you to tell us where we can get the book and have any final thoughts that you would like to have. You also talked about I want to say in your interview that I listened to how people were talking, and you wanted to set the record straight. Why was that so important to set the record straight?
Because I wanted to come clean with everybody. People was talking. I'm wanting to let them know I'm hiding nothing. I done told you who I was. And now I'm setting the record straight by going through these interviews and reaching out to the youth and showing the change through others. See, when I go out and speak to the youth, it helps me also.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sometimes when we encourage others, we encourage ourselves, don't we?
We encourage ourselves because I'm talking about me.
Yeah. Tell us where we can get the book. Tell us about the shoes and where we can get those. And give us any final thoughts that you would like to have.
Okay. Final thoughts. Never let someone make you a priority in your life that only make you an option. And never let someone define who you are, no matter what you've been through. And I want to say this to the youth. Please remember who you are. You're not, your friends is not going to do the time with you.
So-called.
So-called friends. And I want to show you this. We had an experience of two young men that was going to college for football. But due to gang violence, they end up killing an innocent girl. And I want to say to them young men, repent. Do your time. If you never get out, do your time by writing to others so your mistake won't become theirs. And I praise all guys that get out of the prison system that reaching out to the youth. And that's what we are built for.
Yeah.
We are built for this. And where you can get my book at is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Dorrance Publishing. Or you can call me at 901-859-4209. You can order a book from me or my wife at 901-359-5793.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We are out of time. I thank you, and I hope that you will come back and sit down for another chat with us in the future. We thank you guys for coming back. Same chat channel, same chat time next Saturday here on 94.7 FM at 2 p.m. We will see you then right here on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room.
And thanks for having me.
Absolutely.